the more and more I talk to millennials, they're salty, right? They feel like they can't afford a home. And just this week, I'm listening to a podcast, and there were guys on there, and they said, I can't steal their name of what they're doing. They don't call it a home buyer workshop. I'll say what they said, right? But they called it the renter revolution.
Oh, I love
right?
that.
So that no more renting, right? Be a homeowner. And so what they're trying to do is educate renters to have a revolution to stop renting.
See, the point is they don't realize they could probably get into a house a lot cheaper than renting, meaning their monthly rent.
Right.
You know, your mortgage will be so much cheaper than renting a house right now because the rent is high.
Right. And that's the word we have to get out to people and educate them about the difference between renting and owning. The one thing I picked up from Rich, he had a graph and he was showing data. And Rich is all about the numbers.
Loves his numbers.
And it takes the emotion out of it, which I
Yes.
absolutely love. And I've been sharing this with everybody lately, is that if you buy a house from Thanksgiving to spring, you end up getting like a 3% discount. So you end up paying 97% of the list price. So really, if you're buying a $100,000 house, just to make numbers even, you buy it for $97,000. But then the other side he showed was if you're buying during the summer, like not during that time, you end up paying 105% of the list price.
Yes.
Right? So you're paying a premium. So on $100,000, that's an $8,000 discount. And then scale it up. On $200,000, that's $16,000. On $300,000, that's $24,000 difference that you get on a purchase price. And you get one shot at a purchase price. The rate, you can always improve that rate later when the rates drop,
Right.
but you got one shot to get a great purchase price. And when Rich showed me that graph, I'm like, okay, so between Thanksgiving and spring, you got to step up your game if you're buying property, right?
You do. I think the reason that people don't realize that is there's not a lot of buyers out there. A lot of them wait for the spring market
Right.
to come out. The serious buyers, you know, that have to purchase are trudging through the snow and, you know, the storms and all that kind of stuff.
Be a
So-
little uncomfortable and get a good deal on your purchase price, right? Yeah.
And that's why people are thinking, even now, you know, I have to pay more because of the market. Everyone's like, you have to pay more. And I always come in a lot lower.
Right.
You know, I had one that was $290,000. We got it for $250,000.
Right now?
Yeah.
In this market? Nice job.
Yeah.
Well,
And people just don't realize that you can get
A deal.
a deal. You know what I mean? Like a little discount of it. But it really depends on if there's multiple offers.
Right.
Of course, then you're not. And then how badly does the seller want to sell, and you know, your terms are so important.
Well, I think that's the difference between working with an experienced agent like yourself. How long have you been doing this?
21 years.
Okay. And always a top producer, right? So
Thank
you could
you.
do it for 21 years and repeat the first year over and over again.
Correct.
Right? But every year you do a lot of volume, which means you have a lot of experience with a lot of different buyers in a lot of different situations, which has helped you to become a better negotiator.
Correct.
Right? You can have the same agent on that property for $295 and not get to $250.
Correct.
Right? And I gotta say something I think is funny every time. And I want to hear your take on it. Oftentimes people are like, you know, Jeff, I'm done working my 9-to-5 job. And man, I want more time freedom. So I think I'm going to become a real estate agent. What do you think about that?
To be honest with you, I always laugh. I
do
always
too.
laugh when they say that because it's funny because I was just interviewing a girl and, you know, I've had other people come to me and say, you know what, I want to be a realtor just because I can do my own schedule. I can go wherever I want. I can do whatever I want. And I said, you really have no idea. You really can't, you know. So it depends on how successful you want to be. If you want to just sell a couple houses a year, then of course you can.
Right.
But if you want to be successful, you basically have to do whatever your client tells you to do.
Yeah.
So if your client says, hey, I want to go see this house at 5 o'clock, and you're busy at 5, you're rearranging your schedule
Right.
to get them there inside the house at 5 o'clock. Because if you don't, they will go somewhere else.
Right. When you're a lender or a real estate agent, who's your boss?
Who the clients are.
The clients are.
Oh, yeah.
And the clients do they call 9 to 5?
No, I wish they did.
Right. So just Saturday night, a really good friend of mine, I mean, I consider her like my sister. She sent me an email at 11:58 on a Sunday night, right? And she's a night owl. I know this. And I picked up the phone and called her without hesitation. And she goes, I can't believe you're calling me right now. And I go, I'm a frontal lobe kind of guy. Like, I got to get this off my plate.
Me too.
And I go, so let's just work through this. She needed an updated pre-approval because her customer was going to put an offer in. We end up talking on the phone till 2:00 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Like just catching up, right? I haven't talked to her in probably 2 years. But that's it. Like you have to be readily available right now. And I said I think it was like prior to 2012, I could leave an out of office email. It says, I'll catch you on Monday. And people would wait.
Right.
And somewhere around 2012, I'm like, man, this job is becoming on demand. And in 2024, it's instantaneously. If somebody sends you a text message and you don't reply within 30 minutes, they'll send you another text going, where are you?
Or they do the question marks.
Yeah. Are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm here. I'm on the phone.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then that's why I have to put everything on speaker. And I'm texting while I'm talking on the phone.
Right.
You have to do multi things,
Right.
just because people want an answer right then and there.
That's right.
They don't want to wait.
That's right. And I don't mind it, right?
No.
But my thing is I want to be all in focused with the person that I'm talking to, because people can hear you not paying attention.
Yes.
Right. And I don't want to miss the intricate details, and I want to hear people's story. Like I want to hear what they're going through. I want to know, why are they buying a house? Like what's going on? Because everybody has a reason why. They're not just buying a house for no reason. And there's some pretty heartfelt stories. And most times what I find is when somebody calls and I say, how can I help? They end up sharing with me stories that are pretty intimate, that they should probably be sharing with the person that they're talking about. But I'm there for them, and I'm listening, and I care, and I'm taking notes. So that I can be there for them. And it's almost like therapy.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not a licensed therapist by any means, but just listening, most people just want to be heard.
Yes.
Right. And so I want to actively listen, not wait to talk. Like I want to hear what they're going through so that I can do the best job I can to help them, but also help them get into their home the right way.
So I always do what you do and respond right away. Because I had a client on my way here, and she was saying, can we talk tomorrow? Because it's after hours to her, which there's no after hours for us.
Yeah.
But she said, can we talk tomorrow, just because I'm so stressed. Like everybody's sending me paperwork to sign and deal with. And she said, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so she said, can we talk? So I pulled over and I called her because I don't want people to be stressed.
Right.
Because this is very stressful.
Right.
And I always say, Brian Buffini always says about Mrs. Maselli jumping off the roof. It's a long, long story, so I don't want to get into it right now. But so I say that all the time. So when one of my agents will talk and say something, and I'm like, this is what you're doing to the client.
Yep.
I said, this is like Mrs. Maselli on the roof, and she's going to jump off. So you don't want clients to be like that. So that's why you have to deal with things right away. Because if I said, sure, call me tomorrow, well, she has all night to stress. And I don't like that. I don't like the feeling of being stressed.
Right.
So I don't want her to go through that.
And something you bring up, and this hits, right? Because what you said is, oftentimes people can make something simple. Anybody can make something simple sound difficult.
Yes.
Right? If they're trying to look like they're smarter than they really are.
Yes.
The challenge and the real skill is when you can take something very complex and make it simple and feed it in bite-sized pieces. So you walk them through the process. So at the end, they're like, Jeff, this wasn't really hard at all.
Right.
That's when I know that my team and I did our job, because we walked them through a very challenging process. And even the realtors, like, we don't tell you everything that we're doing on the back end as a lender.
Right.
Otherwise you'd have a stroke.
Right.
Right. And so, but just making that complex process more simple for the client. And the reason why that hits for me is, my dad, man, he, just a great dad, and he was always there for me. And, so raised in an orphanage, 8th grade, he gets out and he forges his birth certificate and goes straight to the Korean War. Right. Oh, wow. And so, and then he was an iron worker, and he fell and broke his back and his neck. And so when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, he went on full disability because he was always living in pain. But with that, he was illiterate, like he couldn't read. And so anytime him and I would go somewhere, he would say, hey, Jeff, what is this? And I would read it to him. And, but the dude could fix anything. He could fix any house. He could build anything. He could fix any motor. But oftentimes, either he even said it the one time that he felt like he was stupid. And that breaks my heart, right? Because everybody's smart in their own way. And he had wisdom. He taught me so much wisdom. And to watch him problem solve and fix things as a father and the leader of the house and a husband to my mother, I loved it. And so it hits for me when I'm talking to somebody or I see somebody talking over another person, because I want people to explain it. And I want to explain it like I was explaining it to my dad, right? And that he can understand it and walk through this process. So as soon as I'm talking to somebody, I immediately think like, how could I say this so that my dad would understand it and not talk over them, but understand where they're at and meet them where they're at.
See, and that's what I always teach the agents on our team, is that you have to, because like I texted somebody what an agent said, and it said BOM. And he texted me right back and he goes, what does BOM stand for?
What does that mean, right?
And I'm like, back on the market.
Okay.
So, but we know words, we know things, but people don't.
Right.
If you're not in the industry, you don't understand a lot of this stuff.
Right.
So it's not like I'm trying to, talk to you like you're 4 years old, but I'm trying to talk to you like you're 4 years old.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I don't want to say things that are way over your head. And I will repeat things numerous times just to make sure you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Because if you're telling them a lot of stuff, it's going over their head.
Right.
And it's not that they're not smart, but it's just they're not in the industry.
This isn't what they do.
Correct.
And I'll ask in the beginning, I'm like, hey, have you studied real estate recently? How much do you know about interest rates, or how much do you know about the housing market? And if they say, they'll let me know, and then I know what I'm working with.
Right.
And then that way I can speak to them. I'm like, hey, if you already know this stuff, just tell me stop.
Right.
Or if you want me to pick up the pace, I can pick up the pace. But either way, just give me some feedback and let me know if I'm communicating clearly and you understand what we're doing. Because for me, somebody who knows what I'm doing is my best client.
Right.
Because then they can really appreciate everything that I'm doing for them. And if they don't understand, and oftentimes the person that goes, I'm gonna have a lot of questions,
And I'm like, bring them.
Absolutely.
Bring 'em.
I said, it's the people that don't ask questions
bring
that
'em.
make me nervous.
Yes.
Because I know there's no way they know this.
Right.
So it's the ones that ask the questions. I'm like, keep bringing it.
Just bring it.
Yeah.
I love questions.
Yeah.
I love it. Because I feel like then they're getting involved.
Right.
And they're understanding what we're doing. And
Right.
there's a lot of times, I always teach people it's a need to know basis. If I told you everything like you said that I do on the back end, you would have a heart attack.
Right.
So it's just a need to know basis.
Right. But kept informed.
Yes.
Yep. So Sharon, I have a question for you, right? So like life's going good for you, right? And then it's a random Wednesday and you just get hit with something that you completely didn't expect, right? Your heart snaps, your stomach flips, and you just weren't expecting this. What do you do in that moment? What's your first reaction? Like, how do you handle situations like that?
Cry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, crying's a good thing. Like oftentimes if I see somebody crying, I'm like, let it out, right? Because we have to process our emotions.
Right.
So that's the initial reaction. But then what do you do from there? What's your mindset behind that?
It's hard because when you get hurt,
Yeah.
you just wonder why people are the way they are. Like, why are they doing what they're doing?
Like, do they know it's intentional that they're hurting you, or is maybe it's an unintended consequence?
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's done deliberately.
Right.
And I'm not that type of person. Like you and I are the same. We help people.
Right.
That's
where my heart is, and I know that's where yours is too. Like you want to help people.
Do you know that I would make probably 4 times the amount of money that I make if I didn't have my team?
Why do you have a team then? What's the motivation behind it?
I love helping and training, teaching. I love taking an agent that's here to here.
And seeing that growth.
And seeing the growth.
And growth, why? Like growth in their life, improvement, or
everything,
what is it? Yeah.
Everything. Their life, their family, their knowledge, being a professional real estate agent, not knowing something and then just like answering questions from buyers and sellers and just knowing what to say and do. And I just love helping people.
And from what I gather, because once you get them trained up, you've given them and taught them a skill.
Correct.
Right? And that skill helps them help others.
Yes.
Right? And it's really the American dream of home ownership.
Right.
right? Which, in my opinion, is slowly dying in America, which is why we have more urgency in our heart to educate more people so that they own a home sooner rather than later. But you're teaching people these skills, and then they're making money, right?
Correct.
And then they're helping their families, and then they're living better lives.
Correct.
And that's the fulfillment you get
Yes.
rather than just being a solo agent and making more money.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. I would make probably 4 times the amount if I
Yeah.
had my own team, if I had my own,
Right.
just on my own.
I mean, that's selfless. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Like, that's the heart of people that I want to surround myself with, right? And they always say you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with, and be careful of who you surround yourself with. And if you have people around you that are dragging you down or being toxic, like if you have somebody that has a positive mindset and they're living that way and they're in close proximity with somebody who's negative, like over time, what happens, right? Does the positive pull the negative up? Do they meet somewhere in the middle, or does that negative pull the positive down?
Right.
Do you know?
I don't. I just feel like probably the positive will pull, or the negative will pull the positive down.
That's exactly what happens.
Because that's what I just feel like. The negative person is so negative. I think they just beat the positive person down.
Right.
So like when somebody's negative around me, I'm just like, please stop.
Right.
Like I have to stop it right then and there.
Right.
Because I don't like the negativity.
And you have to be aware of that. And I play with a positive mindset. Like I live every day. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, thank you, God, for putting breath in my nostrils. And let's make today the best day ever, right? And I start off with gratitude first thing. If I'm around somebody who's toxic, I have to separate myself from them.
Oh, for sure.
And the thing is, there's been people in my life that are toxic. And I latch onto them because I'm like, I can do it. I can pull them up. I can pull them up. I can pull them up. And then I realize I cannot pull them up. And if I don't get rid of them, sometimes they get rid of themselves.
Yes.
Right? And when they get rid of themselves, there's like a huge burden lifted off my shoulders. And I'm like, wow, I was trying to do too much. Right? And then I accelerate and I grow. And so,
I feel like I can help everybody.
I do too, to a fault. And I have people that have told me, they're like, Jeff, you have way too much grace.
Yeah.
And because I'm always like, man, I know they're gonna have breakthrough. I know it's coming, and so I'm not gonna change. Like I'm still gonna believe in people. I'm still gonna do everything I can to help lift people up. But I will tell you, in those moments where I get sideswiped, I sit still. Right, I just sit still in the moment. I don't overreact. I just process it, and what I'm learning is it's hard because. But I've had a lot of things happen to me, right? And so I sit still, I get patient, and then I start telling myself, count it all joy, right? Because if I look back through my life, all the hard things I went through is what makes me who I am today, right? And if I didn't have all those hard things, then I wouldn't be who I am today. Right. And if I look back and I say, would I take those hard things out of my life? Absolutely not. Because they've made me resilient. They've made me the person that has grit. They made me the person that goes, okay, I know I can get better from here and accelerate. So I just pause. I count it all joy. And what's wild is my son, you know who Sean Casey is, the baseball player from Upper St. Clair?
Yes.
He has a mindset program. It's called Breakthrough Pro that my son is involved with.
Nice.
And my son shared with me that they gave this analogy that in the plains out west, you have buffalo and you have cattle, right? And when a storm's coming, the buffalo will look at the storm and run right into it. And if you think about it, they're running into that storm. The cattle will see the storm and start to run away from it.
Okay.
But the buffalo will get through the storm quicker because they're running into the storm and the storm's passing over them. The cattle, when they run away, they're in the storm longer because they're running away from their problems, right? And so when my son shared that with me, I'm like, dude, I love that, because forever people that know me go, it's wild to me that when you see a problem, you run right into it. And my thought process before was, that's where relationships are built.
Right.
That's when you know somebody's character. When things are going sideways and it's ugly, like how do people handle adversity? And what does their composure look like? What is their character? What is their integrity? And that's really where you find, my best friends are the people that I went through the hardest times with. Right? And so when my son shared that to me, it just convicted me even more that when things get tough, just face it head on and start running into it. But when it first hits me, I pause. And I know the one time I had a chance to speak in public, and there was somebody in the audience that wasn't a fan of mine, but I showed him love from the front of the room. And you come up to me afterwards, you were crying, and you go, I don't know what I just saw. And I go, what do you mean? You go, I know there's somebody in this room trying to destroy you.
Yep.
And you showed them love from the front of the room. And I was like, Sharon.
And I gave you a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, my personality, that's really hard for me to do when someone is like beating you up.
Yeah. And I was like, Sharon, here's the thing. Like, from the time I knew that person was trying to destroy me, I started praying for him. And the other part is, you know, me not forgiving them or me hating on them is like me drinking the poison and hoping they die.
Right.
Right. So, and I remember what you said to me. You're like, yeah, there's somebody in my life. And you're like, I wish they would get hit with a Mack truck. And I'm like, that's not helping. Right.
I know.
It's just, it hurts you.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And I think it's just because I don't deliberately go out and do that and hurt people. You know what I mean? So I have a hard time understanding why other people would do that.
I know.
Like, if you're not happy with the situation, just move on. Like, just move on.
Yeah.
You don't need to be hurting other people and bringing other people down, because I don't like the negativity.
Right. I think part of it is communicating. And I think like that's the biggest problem that we have in our country, right? Is that communication. Now, if somebody's not happy, like if you're going to know, like nobody's ever going to come up to you and go, hey, Jeff said this about you, Sharon.
Right.
If they say Jeff said this about you, you're going to go, I know he already told me. Right? Because I'm going to come to you first.
100%.
Like if I have some dispute or some unresolved conflict with somebody, I'm coming to them first.
Yes.
And then I'm going to have this conversation. If we can't work it out, then I'm going to grab somebody that knows us both, and we're going to try to work it out.
Right.
And if we can't work it out then I'm just going to love that person. Right? I'm just going to move on and just love that person. And I think most times the reason why we get hurt is because that person made a decision without talking to us.
Right.
Like if they would have just come to us first and said, hey man, you know what? I don't like this about you. I want to move on. I want to do something else. I'd have been like, let's go.
Right.
Like, let me help you get there.
Right.
Right. But at least communicate with me. And that's the biggest challenge.
And I'm not even saying you have to be in the same room.
Right.
Like, because I've had somebody, you know, I just want somebody to put on their big girl or boy pants.
Right.
And just have a conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, I don't think I'm that bad of a person. Like,
no.
You know what I mean? Like,
You're really not. And that's the part, like, people, anybody that knows you, like, once they get to know you, right? Because I know when I didn't know you, I was like, dude, she's tough. Like, I'm kind of scared to talk to her. Like, because you have, I don't know if it's a reputation or a posture about you that's intimidating. But once I got to know you, I'm like, I'm whispering to everybody, I'm like, do you know Sharon Fincham has like a big heart? Like, she really cares about a lot of people, man. Like, she's a great person once you get to know her. And so I understand now who you are. But I don't think you're intimidating if people know you.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's why I guess I just feel like I just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Let's just sit down and have a conversation. I'm not going to chew you up. I just want to talk.
Right.
Like, figure out why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Because I just feel like we don't need to go down this path. It's a negativity, and neither of us need it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So, Sharon, for as long as you've been doing this, is there one transaction that sticks out or one customer that sticks out that's the toughest transaction or customer that you've ever had?
Yes. In 21 years, I've had one, and I was the agent's, or the 10th agent.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, the 10th agent.
They fired 9 agents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, to me, it was a challenge.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get them.
Most people would run for the hills, but go ahead.
I'm going to get them to the table, and all other 9 agents know who this is. If you're watching, they know. But I tell you, it was a very mean person. Mean person. And just demeanor and nasty. And I'm not like that. Like, I'm trying to help.
Right.
I just want to do what's best for the client, get you to the table. But you don't have to talk to me mean and be disrespectful.
Yeah.
You know? So we were at their kitchen table, and the wife was sitting across from me, and the husband was sitting to my left. And I looked at the husband, and I said, if you cannot find your wife, I mean, you can't find her anywhere. I said, no, I buried her ass in the backyard. And she looked at me, she goes, you really didn't just say that, did you? And I said, I sure did. I said, because you're so mean. You're so mean. Why do you have to be so mean?
Right.
Like, I don't understand why you have to be so mean.
Did you ever break through to her? Like, did you ever figure out why she's being so mean? Like, did she ever come around to just being nice to you?
She gave me a huge hug at the closing table.
Okay.
and said that I was the best agent and that thank you for getting me to where I needed to be. I'm so happy.
I love that, right? Because how many people walk away from challenges, right? And especially that, like if they've been through 9 and you're the 10th, that's a challenge, right? And
she was a challenge. I will tell you that I had heart issues. I ended up in the hospital.
Oh, no.
Yes, because of her. So the other 9 that left, it was smart for them to leave.
Right.
Because I did have to have a heart issue surgery.
I don't know if it's worth all that.
It's not worth all that, but I tell you, I love challenges.
So that client today, do you still talk to that customer?
No,
Okay.
no. But she did text or did call me and ask me to, sell one of her family relatives.
And did you?
No.
Okay. No. You said, I'm not going to work with you guys, or it just didn't work out?
I just didn't call her back.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just because
it's too much.
It's too much.
Yeah. And we talked about that earlier, right? Like there's one thing to take on a challenge. It's another thing to take on something that's not healthy for you or is toxic, right? So that's a smart move on your part. But way to have the courage and step up into that one.
It was just, everyone's like, are you sure you want to do this?
And
they saw everything that I was going through the whole process. They're like, I think you just need to walk away.
Right.
And I said, I can't because that's my job.
Yep.
And I was not leaving her high and dry, and I wanted to get them to the table.
That's so good. Oftentimes, and no matter where I've been, anytime a loan officer has a tough customer, they'll usually call me and go, hey, can you take this one over? And I do, right? And, I've got a number of challenging customers and realtors. And I can tell you every one of them I've become friends with. And the one customer was so tough that I called him to say, hey, congratulations, you're cleared to close. And he ripped me apart. And it was shocking because what we did for him, like we took him from a credit score that didn't qualify to coaching him up to get it to qualify, to getting him to the closing table. And he had been turned down by other lenders. Even a lender that was working with him said, Jeff, I can't handle this person. Can you take him? I was like, sure, I'll take him. He closed. And when he said to me, he goes, you did nothing for me. And I said, it's okay that you don't understand everything I did for you. I'm going to sleep good tonight knowing that I put you and your family into a home. It's okay. The best part about that was like a year later, he reached out and apologized. And he goes, I'm sorry. And he goes, I should never have treated you that way. And I'm like, it's okay, man. Like, I understand, but thank you for the apology. Like, you didn't have to say it, but thank you.
That means so much.
Oh,
that means so much.
I mean, this is years later, and I still remember the phone call, right? And I still remember the transaction. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you was, oftentimes I don't hear loan officers say it as much as I hear realtors say it. They say, and I know you don't do this because we've talked about it, man, I need to increase my purchase price so that I don't have to do so much work or so many transactions and I can make more money.
Yes.
And I had a person tell me that in like 2004. They're like, you really need to discriminate who you work with. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, the bigger transactions you treat better than the lower transaction. I'm like, no, like I'm going to treat everybody the same. And I'm like, it's too much work, number one, to remember who's who.
Right.
I'm just going to love everybody and treat everybody the same.
Yes.
And the best part of that is it was a $50,000 purchase in McKees Rocks for a couple. That couple, and that was in like 2007, that couple has referred me more business than any one person walking the planet Earth. And they're good for, their name pops up like every other month going, hey, they referred business to you. They're not even in real estate, right? They're nowhere near this industry, but they consistently refer business to me. And I'm so thankful for that.
See, and I do the same thing. I treat everybody the same.
Yep.
So if it's $1 million property or if it's a $20,000 property, I put in an offer on a $8,500 property.
Let's go.
And my manager at the time, this is years ago, said to me, why are you doing that? You're worth more than that. And I said, this person is looking for a home and he needs my help. And that's all I care about. That's all I care about.
Right.
Who cares about the commission? You're helping somebody with their dream, and he didn't get the house. Somebody bid it higher.
Wow.
But probably about a year later, he bought a house for like $55,000.
Okay.
And the thing is, he was able to save up more money. He was able to afford and qualify for more.
Right.
But the thing is, you can't judge.
No.
You can't judge.
Nope.
Because it doesn't matter. Like, they need our help.
Yep.
So my goal is to get them into a house.
Right. And to that point, there are times where I can't help the customer. Like for what, our products are just doesn't fit.
Right.
But I'll say, hey, here's your option. Here's where you can go, and they'll take care of you. And I just did that recently, and I said, he goes, well, where should I go? And I'm like, here's where you go. They have the best product. They're gonna have the best rate. He goes, do you know? He goes, and he's a business owner. He goes, you know how much time you just saved me from me not having to call all these different lenders and figure out who can actually do it, and he's super grateful for it. And the banker that I referred it to, he's super grateful for it as well.
Nice.
But like, to me, I just referred it. I know he's going to be taken care of, and just move on because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Right.
See, what I like about it is I'll hear other agents go, okay, well, I can't show that property because it's only this percentage commission, or I can't show that property. And then I can hear them steering to get a buyer to purchase a certain property because it has a higher commission. And that's not why you got into real estate.
Right.
To me, that's not why I got into real
Right.
estate. I got into real estate to help people.
Right.
So to me, you just need to do what's best for your client, not what's best for you.
That's right. And that comes from a mindset of serving.
Yes.
Right. And when you serve others, everything takes care of itself. When you don't think about yourself and you're not like, what's in it for me?
Right.
And you think about, how can I help more people?
Yes.
That's when everything comes together, and you just feel better, and everything works. Everything clicks. Everything comes together when you start doing a service mentality.
And I think that's why I love having my team.
Right.
It's a close-knit family. We do anything, for each other. And, it's just, I love helping people.
Right. So Sharon, oftentimes people will call you as an agent and they're like, hey, I just want to go check out this house. What's one of the first things somebody should do when they call you and say, hey, I want to look at a home?
So there's many different things. So I will show a house to somebody that's brand new, that's never seen any houses. I want to build a relationship. I want to build rapport with someone. But then when I'm there meeting them, I will talk about, have you been pre-approved? So the first thing is a buyer should get pre-approved. And there's so many different reasons why. I had an agent, I'm showing a property tomorrow, and the first thing the agent said is, please send me over the pre-approval letter. Now, my buyer is already pre-approved, but if the buyer wasn't, then the buyer couldn't see that property until they have the pre-approval. And sometimes it depends. That it depends on your situation. Sometimes it takes a little while to get a pre-approval letter. It's not just 15 minutes of a quick conversation.
Right.
Because how about if they're on commission, or they have, they're self-employed, they have child support. There's so many factors that go into a pre-approval letter. It's not just, I run your credit and here you go.
Right. Listen, if I ever get to retire, I've been saying this for years, I'm going to buy a boat, and the title of the boat's going to be, It's Always Something. Right? Because you can give me a perfect buyer,
yes,
and then the title comes back with something on it. You can give me a perfect title and a perfect buyer, and something happens on the appraisal, right? But just a quick story about pre-approvals. Had a customer call me a couple weeks ago, and I said, hey, let's take your application. So we take her application. Everything looks good. I said, hey, can you get all your documentation in here? She goes, yes. And I said, okay, we get it all in, and then we're like, you still look good. Hey, is there a property you have in mind? She goes, I do. I look at it, and I go, wait a minute. It looks like a mobile home. It looks like a double wide, right? So I have her pre-approved for a home ready program, which only requires 3% down, right? It's a discounted interest rate. It's a discounted mortgage insurance. So it's one of the best programs that you can qualify for. And I said, let me do my homework on this property because I need to make sure we can finance it, right? So I said, just give me a minute to look it up. And I couldn't tell from the pictures what it was. But then we did our homework, and we find out it's a double wide that was put on that lot in 1990. Wow. But we can finance it. But there's a difference, right? She can't put 3% down. She has to put 5% down because it's a manufactured home, right? So for her finances, that 2% more down payment is a big deal.
It is.
Right?
If she doesn't have it, it sure is.
So now, if you're not doing your homework up front on the pre-approval, and you're not working with a loan officer that knows these things, what happens? You go under contract, you give hand money, You pay $500 for an appraisal. You pay $500 for a home inspection. You pay $150 for a pest inspection, only to find out 2 weeks before closing, you can't close.
Right.
And you just lost all that money, right? So it's very critical that you talk to somebody up front. You hand in all your documentation. They know how to read it, review it, and then you're telling them what are the properties that you're looking at. We had another one last week. They said, hey, we're going to go look at this property. I said, can you send me the address? They sent it over. I look at it. I'm like, time out.
Yeah.
I'm like, this looks like a double wide. And it was a double wide built in 1972, which anything built before 1976 can't be financed. So I was like, hey guys, just so you know, you can't get the mortgage that you think you can on this property, right? And so the pre-approval is so critically important. And the other part is getting that documentation up front. Now we know, what do you qualify for? Do you qualify for a discounted rate? Do you qualify for interest-free money from the state? Do you qualify for some special programs that are out there? Because if we don't, what you think you make as your income is not what the underwriter thinks you make, right? Those two numbers hardly ever match, and that's called your mortgage qualifying income, and that's what determines what you qualify for. And then the other part is how many people are going to live in a house? Because some programs are the qualifying income, meaning what's the income you're putting on the application? Some programs are the household income. Like everybody that lives in a house, we got to accumulate all their income to see if you qualify for this program, right? So it matters up front that you have a loan officer that's willing to do the extra work. And I can't tell you how many times, and just in the past 2 weeks, people will say, well, hey, I'm pre-approved with this company. And it's usually an online company out of Southwestern Pennsylvania. And I go, by chance, did you submit W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements? They're like, no, they said I'm good.
Yep.
And I'm like, can we please review this, right? Can you send me their loan estimate? And I look at the loan estimate, and this has happened twice now. And one customer was under contract, and they go, hey, you know what? We found this online lender. They called us. We're bringing less to close with them than we are with you. And I said, just to make sure that you're making a good decision, can you show me their loan estimate? I looked at their loan estimate. They left off the broker fee, which is like anywhere from $300 to $1,000.
I saw it $1,000.
Right? And then they left off the escrows. So they left off the taxes. They shorted it about $2,000. They had the transfer stamps wrong because Southwestern Pennsylvania, especially Allegheny County, is very tricky.
It is.
On transfer stamps, right? So if you're out of this area and you're trying to do financing in Allegheny County, chances are you got the wrong transfer stamps in there. And they were missing another fee on there. And then I pointed out all the mistakes, and I said, if it's apples to apples and we compare, I'm $2,000 less than what they were showing. And they were like, oh my gosh. And my rate was lower. My rate was almost 0.5% lower.
That's huge.
But the online lender said this, well, here's the deal. For 120 days from the time we talk, even after your loan closes, if the rates drop by 0.5% or more, we'll give you that rate. No, I've never seen that executed, right? But that sounds like a hook to me to get you to go with them.
Yes.
But fortunately, this customer was like, you know, Jeff, you've been transparent with us from the beginning. You put a video together and you showed us our loan options of whether we put 3% down, 10% down, or 20% down. What's that difference look like?
Nice. You've
given me the interest rate up front, which the other lender wouldn't even disclose the rate until they asked for it. They wouldn't give them the fees until they asked for it. I like being transparent and being upfront and going, here are your options. So for me, and especially for you, because you're driving around, the average buyer, I think, takes 6 to 12 months to buy a house. How much gas?
A lot.
How much time?
A lot.
Right? And if somebody's...
Because every house is probably 25-minute drive from each house. So it's a lot of time.
Right.
And I like them to be pre-approved just because I need to know what can they really afford, how you said, because they'll say, oh, well, I can afford $400,000. And I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome. They want to go see all these houses. Now, how about if I go show them all these houses? They want to put in an offer. So they've fallen in love with a house. They want to put in an offer, but then they call you to get pre-approved. And then you're like, oh, Sharon, there's a lot of things with this file that they can only afford like $350,000.
Right.
Well, now I've shown them a $400,000 house that they want, and they're not going to be happy with something under $350,000.
Right.
Because that's why they were looking at $400,000.
Right.
So I have a hard time with that because every house that I show them after that, they're going to always be comparing to the $400,000 house.
Right.
And then that breaks my heart because they can't have that, what they want. They're just now going to have to try to figure something else out.
Right. And that's the very important part of the beginning, is that it's never the purchase price. It's always the monthly payment.
Yes.
Right. So if you're buying a house in one school district, you may be able to afford a $250,000 house. If you're buying a house in another school district, you might be able to afford a $500,000 house because the taxes are so much different.
Right.
And so, how do you like so we give you a pre-approval app, right?
I love it.
So how do you like our pre-approval app that we give you? Because literally you just change the taxes and the purchase price, and then you can tell.
And I can look. So when they send me the houses, and they're all in different school districts, because I don't know how people don't care. They like, oh, I can live anywhere.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, let's just try to narrow it down a little bit. But what I do is then go into your app, and I plug everything in for each house to know financially, can they afford this house?
Right.
Because I don't want to show them something that is going to overextend them.
Right.
Now, I love your app because it tells me the closing cost fee, their monthly payments, so that they can see exactly what they have to pay. So they feel comfortable before we even go out to look at the houses.
Right. And we first started using that app. What we found is most of our nights and weekends were spent issuing cost sheets, saying, hey, Jeff, I'm looking at this house. Can you give me a cost sheet for 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, which would take me 30 minutes because it's hard to print those up.
Right.
But then with this app, people are looking for homes at midnight on Saturday night, right? They just type in the purchase price and the taxes of the property they're looking at, and they can see what's my monthly payment. They can see what's my cash to close. And if they like it, they click one button and it texts you the pre-approval letter and go, hey, Sharon, I want to make my offer. And that gives them speed to beat everybody else in this market, and they don't have to wait for us to issue a pre-approval letter.
I write up offers at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty.
I don't want to be calling you and going, hey, Jeff, I need another pre-approval letter, and then hang up and go, you know what, now they just changed their price.
Right.
So I need another one.
Well, that's the beautiful part. Like when we first turned that thing on, it was a Sunday. And when we gave it to a handful of agents, we started seeing pre-approval letters fly out from 9 p.m. to like 3 a.m.
That doesn't surprise me.
Because agents, you guys are firefighters, right? You're putting the fires out from 9 to 9. And then from 9 o'clock until you go to sleep, you guys are doing all your paperwork.
Yes.
And it just makes your life easier having that at your fingertips to go, hey, it's right here, right now. Yeah. And the customers love it because, if they get a stop button, they go, okay, I can't be looking at this house. But I always tell them, I'm like, it's not stop, it's call Jeff.
So that's so funny you said that, because it flashes red.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll call you and go, hi, they want to see this house. Can you check and maybe up my little limit?
Yeah.
And then if you can, then you do.
Right. Because we don't want to give you the potential to print a bad pre-approval letter. So we keep you in a safe zone. But we always say, if you get the red light, call us. Yeah. Right. And then we'll play in the gray zone to see if they can make it or not.
That's awesome.
That's so good. Through the years, I've worked with a ton of real estate agents, right? And when we see contracts come over, we pretty much know every agent in Western Pennsylvania. And we'll see someone go, hey, we got 2 professionals on this one. Or we'll see it and go, we're going to have to do all the work on this one. But I will tell you, top of the top, knowing the sales agreement inside and out is you. And so with that said, what's some of the major errors that you see real estate agents make on the sales agreement, right, that could be harmful to their clients or isn't helping their clients? And why is it so important to work with an agent like you who knows the contract so well?
So I've gotten out of so many contracts, or just because the contract maybe wasn't done properly.
Right.
The time of the essence is huge. So what happens is they go past their time of the essence date, and agents will just still have their seller sign it and send it back. And then I'm like, but it's not executed. And they're like, oh, yes, it is. It's executed. We're all good. Well, we're not.
Because you don't have a binding agreement.
Correct.
Okay.
Because something has been changed in it, or either we're past our days.
Okay.
Another reason about the time of the essence is people will leave it blank. So what happens is if they leave it blank and just say, I have the contract, and then down the road, say maybe 2 months down the road, we still haven't sold this house. Then what happens is my seller could come to me and say, you know what, remember that offer that was on the table? I think I'm going to take it now. And I'm like, great. There's no time of the essence in there. Oh, wow. So I send it over to the seller. Seller signs everything. I then send it over to the other agent and say, congratulations, your buyer just bought this house that they wanted 2 months ago.
Wow.
And they're like, well, they don't want it anymore. Sorry. They just purchased it.
Because they didn't know the contract.
They didn't know the contract.
Right.
Because they left that time of the essence blank, and my seller now wanted the offer.
Wow. And have you had that go through?
Well, the buyer now has to do inspections or do something to be able to get out of the contract.
Oh, wow. Wow. What else have you seen on a contract that's critical for buyers?
So,
because the thing is for me, like, I know a lot of people get in this industry and they don't have the experience, right? And they're filling out this contract frivolously. Like, they're just like, we'll just put this here, put this there, like, not knowing. Like, you have a binding contract here that, has financial repercussions if it's not executed properly, right?
I think a lot of people leave things blank as well. And you should never leave anything blank.
And do you sit with your clients and walk through the sales agreement with them?
Yes.
And how important is a seller disclosure?
Oh, it's so important, because what happens is, I don't know if you realize this, but once a buyer closes and they walk into the house, something breaks. Something breaks. So they have water in their basement the next day. I've had it the next day. And they're calling me screaming because there's water in my basement. And so I look at the seller's disclosure. It's not disclosed. Well, then they start talking to neighbors, and the neighbors will say, oh, yeah, Jim knew about the water in the basement. He had somebody out a couple times. He's got a couple different prices, too.
Right.
The neighbors will tell you everything. So now the buyer is pissed because now they have to get the basement fixed.
Right.
And then they're now suing the seller because they didn't disclose.
That's crazy you say that, because I'm in this industry. I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's true. Right? When I bought my house in 2014, I did not do a sewer line test. And we weren't there 6 months. And the sewage backed up the whole downstairs.
Oh, wow.
Because the tree roots were blocking the sewer line. And
that's a costly thing. Like, I've had it like from $5,000 to $24,000 just to fix that issue.
Yep. And I didn't even look at the seller disclosure. Like, I glanced at it, but I didn't, like, I was depending on the agent that I used at the time to be like, hey, this is probably a red flag. You need to look at it, but just blew through everything. And then the retaining wall fell.
Oh, wow.
There was just so much that went wrong. And I feel like they duct taped it long enough.
A lot of people do.
For me to buy it. And then when I moved in, like, everything crumbled. And, we got through it. But again, you talking about earlier, you're like, why do people do the things they do if it's malicious? And it's like, if you knew this stuff,
right?
Like, eventually the truth is going to come out. The truth is always revealed. Like, over time, the truth comes out.
Well, so, they just hope that you're not going to either notice, or it's going to be long enough that people are going to say, well, it's home ownership.
Right.
Things happen.
Right.
But
that's why it's important to have a seasoned agent that knows what they're doing, that's had a ton of reps, that's had a ton of experience, not just one or two, or repeating the same year over 21 times, so that you've experienced pretty much everything you're going to see. I like to think that I've seen everything you could possibly see in lending.
No, you haven't.
And then I just saw one today, and I'm just like, we'll never know everything. But the more experience you have, the better you become at problem solving. And if you're a student of the game and you're studying every day, then I know you are. How many trainings do you go to a year?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm in 3 classes right now.
Right.
I'm always learning. I just love learning because I just want to be better at what I'm doing. And to me, you have to always be learning.
Right.
You really do.
And I had an older gentleman. He was like a father figure to me. He's like, when you're green, you grow. When you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot.
Ooh.
And it stuck. And so every morning, I'm reading every morning about mortgages, about mortgage products, or how can I deliver it better to the client, or how can I improve the client experience, so that we're always tweaking, right? We have a phenomenal process right now, but we're always tweaking it to make it a little bit better. And on a clear to close call, I'm like, hey, congratulations, you're clear to close. My next question is, what could we have done better?
Love that.
Right. And I'm like, I'm honest, like, give me honest feedback.
Yes.
Because we can only get better because you're the client and you just went through this experience with us. tell me the truth. Like, was there any part of this that could have been better?
Right.
And, you know, most times people are like, man, it was phenomenal. It wasn't as hard as people said it was going to be. And that's a testament to my team and myself for all the, you know, revisions we've done to our process through the years. But every once in a while, you'll have somebody who was paying attention and they're like, you know, this one thing. And I'm like, can you go in bigger detail? Tell me the details.
Yeah.
And what's this one thing that I can do better? And then we change it.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to set the expectations. So to me, that's always so important. And for lending, what I always tell people is they will ask you for the same piece of paper 10 times because there's so many hands in your file. And it's not like they lost it. It's just there's so many different people looking at your file. So they may ask you for the same piece of paper 10 times. So just keep everything in a file. So when they do ask, it's so quick just to send it back over.
Right.
And then at the end, they're like, Sharon, it really wasn't that bad.
Right.
They only asked for it twice or they only asked for it once or whatever. But I set the expectation of what it could.
Right.
Just so that if you do ask 10 times, they're not upset.
Yeah. So when it's 2 instead of 10, they're cool with that.
They are.
If you didn't set that expectation, they had to send 2, they might have been jacked.
Yes.
Right. I'd like to think we don't ask for the same thing
You
twice.
guys don't. But other lenders do. And that's the reason why, because I've had so many other lenders and I had buyers like yelling at me going, I've already sent this to them 5 times.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, they lose things. It gets misplaced.
Well, the best part is when we have a client that goes, I've already given this to you. And I'll look at the email and I go, did you read the email? And then they go, oh, we're telling you your driver's license is expired. Can you update your driver's license and send it back? And they keep sending us the expired driver's license. And they're like, I didn't read the email.
Yeah,
like,
they don't.
No, and I just kept sending you the same driver's license that's expired.
Yes.
So details matter.
They do.
Right. And what's wild about that is prior to 2012, I used to send a 1-paragraph email listing like 12 things that the customer had to get me. Right. And I would get it.
Yeah.
And then 2012 hit and they're like, hey, what's my password? I'm like, your password's in line 3 and I really need you to read to line 12. And so we've learned like attention spans have become shorter than a goldfish.
Short. Oh
so
my.
we just give it in bite-sized pieces
You have to.
so that we can walk you through the process. And then by the finish line, you're like, hey, it wasn't that tough. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about when agents show properties and you're asking them for feedback. What I want another agent to do is like talk to their buyer and go, how can I get you into this house?
Okay.
Like, what do you like about this house? What do you not like about this house?
Okay.
And some agents will just send feedback going, you know, the kitchen needs to be updated or it needs new carpet. So they're not putting in an offer. Well, people don't realize carpet can be replaced.
Right.
Kitchens can be redone.
Right.
So I'll say, why don't you have a conversation with your client and see what price would make them happy? They can redo the kitchen. They can put new carpet in. But agents don't always think outside the box.
Right.
And that's what really bothers me because I'm having to like pull things out of people. And they're like, oh, well, I'll let the buyer know. That's really nice.
Well, the thing is, I don't know anybody that buys a house that doesn't want to customize it from the time they buy it. Like even a brand new house,
Yes.
like you're going to customize it, right? There's always things like nobody walks in a house and goes, I'm not going to change anything. It's absolutely perfect. So to your point, that has to be a conversation. Like if you don't like the carpet, then how much off the price
Right.
would make you like this house? Because there's a price tag on everything.
Yes.
Right. And for the right price tag, the carpet doesn't matter. The kitchen doesn't matter.
Right.
And so at least have that conversation. And
But agents don't.
we used to say that in lending all the time, right? The underwriter would go, denied. I'm like, can you give me a counteroffer?
Right.
Like, are they denied for absolutely everything? And there was a customer who was buying, I think it was like a $300,000 house. She goes, denied. And I was looking for 95% financing. And I go, can you tell me what he qualifies for?
Yeah.
And she was like, he qualifies for $127,000. I said, okay. I went back to the guy. I go, hey, you qualify for $127,000. He goes, I'll take it. Right. And he took the $127,000 loan, right?
Yep.
Instead of saying denied,
Yep.
like, let's have a conversation. Like, what's the counteroffer? Like,
I don't understand
Yeah.
why people don't have conversations,
right,
you know, because it could be an easy fix.
right,
I'm like, what do you need?
Right.
What do you need for me to help your buyer choose this house as their new home.
Right. Instead of just walking away.
Yes.
Because from there, it's just a ton of effort. You have somebody, a potential buyer that could make it work. It's just going to take a few iterations of conversations of what does it take to get there.
Yep.